Hello everyone. Today we'll be taking a look at Israel, Ukraine, and other conflicts of interest. As of this recording, it is November 11th, 2023. So first of all, of course, we're going to talk about the northern border with Hezbollah. As we can see here, most of what's going on is just predominantly airstrikes by, the Israelis and just more kind of shellings that have been reported going on by Hezbollah. And there also seem to be some hostilities going on between Syria as well out here, um, and just the usual clashes as well going on in West Bank. But here we go in Gaza Strip. We can see what is most interesting to me. We can see mostly out here is that they are trying to completely encircle the Ash-Shati refugee camp, which, as I've been looking at it, seems to be, updated by the hour of how much the Israelis seem to be taking, block by block, uh, um, bits of the Gaza city itself. So, just in terms of what changes there have been, we can see that there this prong has been pushing south and this has been pushing north, seemingly trying to take mostly incremental parts of each block. And something I wanted to mention as well, mostly, is that just in terms of when ground is taken by Israelis or whatnot, especially in just this war, in particular, um, just because the Israelis are holding on to it does not necessarily mean that it's safe, in terms of, there are Israelis here, right? But that doesn't mean that there are tunnels underground under there that Hamas militants can pop up out of. So just in terms of that, that's all I really wanted to talk about. But also, the Jordanian army is dropping medical aid into Gaza. So this isn't the first time this has happened. This happened, I believe, a few days ago, which, from what I understand, of course, the Jordanians needed, obviously, clearance by Israel to do that. Um, so yeah, this just seems to be, because Jordan, from what I understand, Jordan is an ally to the United States. But if you're an ally to the United States and you're like watching this happen, especially just as another Middle Eastern Islamic country, you have to show some kind of solidarity with the people of Gaza. So I believe that this is what it's amounting to. All right, a story here from Voice of America. One child is killed every 10 minutes in Gaza. So there are two things here that I really want to talk about. So this is an interview here by of course, Voice of America, and they're just interviewing this individual, Jason Lee, who is the director of Palestinian Territories for the Save the Children. Yeah, so he is obviously just an individual who's obviously well voiced in the matter. So something that I want to talk about here, that he said, is quote, this is why it's critical that all sides adhere to international humanitarian law and prioritize the protection of civilians. And he's just pretty much talking about here that we have to protect the civilians and people, especially the children in this conflict. And I just wanted to bring up that how how are you supposed to protect civilians, children, and just non-combatants when the playing field is full of them? It's I don't know how else to describe it other than it's impossible. It's impossible to try and claim that uh, adhering to humanitarian and international law is going to save like the civilians, which, yeah, you're going to save some, but just the simple fact that you're leveling buildings of which civilians live in, there's no chance. Just firing tank shells and JDAMs, or just any gunfire by either side is going to, like, a stray bullet is going to kill a child, and like anywhere. So I just wanted to bring it up, mostly that his statistic that he's claiming, that every 10 minutes a child dies, right? So I did some math, and that's 144 children a day. And if we multiply that by, if this goes on for another month, that'd be 4,320 children dead in 1 month. Um, and if we say this conflict maybe goes on for, heaven forbid, a year, that'd be 51,000 children dead. So if this conflict does go on, however long, a year, maybe, hopefully just maybe another month, but considering how slow it's been, and we don't really even know the gains or the outcome of what this war will be and what Israel really wants out of it. Of course they want to completely destroy Hamas once and for all, and Hamas wants to destroy, the state of Israel once and for all. Um, so what will, who obviously, Israel is completely one-sidedly stronger in this conflict, but just in terms of how long either side is willing to carry out this fight at the expense of, civilians, children. um yeah, anyways, so what I'm trying to get at here is that the longer this goes on, obviously the more children are going to die. So, it's impossible to say that, humanitarian aid, it will help, but it will not, it's not going to save all of the civilians out there. It's just not. So in terms of some footage, there wasn't really anything that didn't. It wasn't really this to some extent coming out of the Gaza Strip. But what I mostly wanted to show here was, destruction of, that's been going on. Um, it looks, if you've ever, I hate to compare it to this, but like this, it looks like something out of like one of the early Call of Duty games, or one of the older Call of Duty games, like, Black Ops or something like that. It's just crazy to see this. But anyways, that this is going on in real life. This is something that you would think that would only happen in a video game, and yet it's happening before our very eyes. Anyways, so what I really wanted to show here, what I want to talk about, is that there is a clip here. So yeah, as we can see, these are tanks rolling by, but we can see that they have um, drone nets. They have cages above them to prevent, drone drops, which is something that we only really saw in Ukraine, right? Because either side drops explosives from drones overhead. But it's interesting to see that this is also being employed here too, because obviously Hamas have taken a few notes from Ukraine, and from what I understand, actually, is that drone drops predate Ukraine as well. In terms of that, they were actually, I believe, they were used also in the Middle East. I want to say by IS originally. I'm not entirely sure, but that yeah, essentially that, drone drops are a thing that happen out here. Although we don't really see too much of them. I haven't seen too many of them personally by Hamas. But yeah, that's what I really wanted to show, is that, this both these conflicts, war is evolving. All right, now pivoting over to Ukraine here really quick. We only really got one update here near Stepova, which is, of course, in the Avdiivka direction as usual. So as we can see, Russian forces pushing a bit past this roadway over here, perhaps, a few hundred meters maybe. But in general, the other updates were just minor, so we can just go over those really quick. So Vasyukivka and Mykolaiivka, we can see that Russian forces seemingly either have retracted a little bit, but meanwhile the combat area has also seemingly retracted slightly. So these are either clarifications, or they are perhaps things that have amounted to something over time, but who knows. And then the other one was over here in Liman Pershy. We can see that the combat area has extended a little bit. So perhaps, maybe, Russian forces might be trying to pivot in this area. It's possible, but this is, for the most part, as we know, this part of the front line has been completely stagnant for a very long time, except for that one incursion by the Russians for a couple days, but then after that that was it. Um, but yeah, other than that, that's all. Those are the only updates. In terms of reported combat, we haven't got any combat engagements reported for today right now, which doesn't mean that there aren't any combat engagements. It's just that it hasn't been reported. But of course, mostly shelling has been going on, and as we can see, interestingly enough, as we'll talk about in a second here, there is some air defense being shot down in the Kyiv area. So as we'll talk about in a second here about the significance of that, but just in general, as we can see, just mostly shelling. All right, a quick story here by the BBC. Kyiv hit by the first air attack in 52 days, which you would think that hitting the capital isn't particularly something of note, but it's been a while since it's happened. The last time the Kyiv was hit was, or at least I believe consistently hit, was only around last year during the winter time when they were trying to knock out um, Ukraine's electrical infrastructure and trying to pretty much make them I mean it's obvious that they were trying to make the civilians suffer during the winter, which from what I understand, the winter ended up being pretty warm, so it wasn't particularly tough. But it's interesting to see also these strikes apparently become a year after the liberation of Kherson. Um, Although a good part of it, Kherson city, not the entire oblast, considering the oblast is still under Russian occupation. Um, but I wanted to talk about it in the sense that we are probably going to see more attacks hit by hit of Kyiv hit by Russians, mostly because as winter comes, it's going to be tough on civilians to try and stay warm, uh, especially if it's not going to be as warm a winter as it was last year. And also, I want to talk about just in terms of like Soviet doctrine and Soviet like ideology, um, names, places, and symbolic victories in that way are very important. Um, in terms of the way it is in in memory of the people, and that's especially how Russians nowadays, the Russian government seems to portray this war, and they're trying to keep that sort of tradition alive. So trying to hit Kyiv a year after this after the liberation of Kherson is it's it is believable to me. It's believable to me that they would do it on this specific day, not necessarily that now it's starting to get colder, but on days that are symbolically important, hitting Ukraine, I think is most plausible. So now, just in terms of any footage, I'm only going to show like a couple of stills from this footage because it's of course stuff I can't really show. But this is the Avdiivka direction, and most of this clip is pretty much just a lot of Russian armor just being destroyed. Because of course it's pretty much the main vector of their assault right now. And we know that the Russians have a tendency to pretty much just throw equipment at the problem until they succeed, which I mean it's it has very high casualties and it's a very high cost, but from what we've seen in the Avdiivka direction, it seems to yield some gains, albeit quite small, but they are consistent. So I also just want to highlight all the footage here are it's FPV drones. So this drone flies into this vehicle here, and as we can see, it catches fire. So just in terms of how this war is being fought, of course, as we talked about in the previous Israeli clip, drones are very important, and if you've been following this war yourself and seen any footage, you would know that drones are integral. That there are entire um, there are entire individuals just dedicated to being drone operators. So yeah, this is the future of war. All right, so of course, we gotta talk about Myanmar here. So here's a clip. Just in general, I actually found that there were some news sites that were reporting on this, and it seemed pretty high up in terms of for what they were reporting. But what they're talking about here is that this jet was actually downed by anti-junta forces. So yeah, it's just that just these guys out here, nothing crazy is shown, but yeah, that this jet is apparently it came down, and there were some parachutes that were found later. So just in general, what I want to talk about here is that the hostilities have also just uh, um, uh, they have continued southward from the Shan State in the, I believe it's called the Kaya State. So this, of course, as we've been talking about, and as we can see, is that this conflict is expanding and it is growing across Myanmar here. So how much further is it really going to go? Is it going to go all the way? Are they going to get stopped? We don't really know, but it's something to keep an eye on, and we're going to keep looking at this as long as it keeps keep happening. All right, well that's all I really want to talk about here today. Just wrapping up, I can see that the Ash-Shati refugee camp is again almost completely encircled. So just in terms of what that really means, we'll just have to see. Um, but again, if you have any questions or anything you want to bring up, anything you want to take a look at, let me know in the comments. And other than that, thanks for watching.